Now,
Okay,
hi.
got it. Hey,
Yes, here we are. It's
here we
a
are.
Saturday evening here in the UK, and we're delighted. All
Saturday,
Southern
yeah,
California.
Saturday afternoon here in LA, Los
Yeah,
Angeles.
Mr.
Yeah.
Tone Scott, another VC legend. And John and I were just saying, possibly, maybe our last Zoom session. So it's going to be a
Yeah,
special one. And
yeah.
we're
So,
absolutely delighted to have Tone, and yeah, with a great encyclopedic knowledge of the business as well as
Yeah,
the vinyl.
yeah, uh, through experience and also a great, in regards to that, I don't talk about it a lot on my channel because I feel it just will, people don't like it. They just don't. There's something about it that people don't like it. And not just in the VC, but my entire career, I've kind of never. When people say, "What do you do?" I don't talk about that.
Yeah, yeah, fair
And
enough.
they go, "Well, do you sell drugs?" I'm like, "No, I just don't talk about." That's their first thing. Do you sell drugs? Is it illegal? I'm like, "No, it's not illegal. I just don't talk about what I do." Because people then tend to. I don't understand why you guys, but people tend to take offense or uh, take it the wrong way. Like you're saying, "Oh, look what I do," but I really I just But from what I've done, I from what I do professionally, I've done my entire career since I was 19. I'm 42 now, going on 43, and I've learned. I've been so grateful to be able to do on all facets what I've done in this industry, but I've also learned to understand that I absolutely despise. I despise the industry that I love to work in so much. It's really um, it's not an easy thing to navigate. It's
No,
not an easy thing to navigate.
no,
Yeah,
no, no.
yeah,
Well, we're all three of us are here today because we share a great passion for music and
yes,
for
sir.
the vinyl record way of music being shared and transmitted. And for anyone who
Yeah,
hasn't watched one of these sessions before, well, with this last year, we've been having these incredible special guests from all around the world who are all part of this amazing vinyl community. And we've each selected 7 records that we've been enjoying recently, and a book or a film or both. And we're just going to chat about those. And I'm going to kick off. And we were just
let's do it.
chatting before we started the recording. In the UK, we've just sort of entered a slightly more open phase. Like the lockdown is beginning to ease, and this week, for the first time, record shops have been open for the first time for 4 months, actually.
Yeah,
So
I'm happy for you guys about that. That's
yeah.
awesome.
So I'm going to share something that I actually bought in a record shop this week,
All right.
which
Oh,
is
good.
this Blue Note reissue. It's Joe Henderson. It's page one. Um, Kind of fairly early Joe Henderson record.
first, I think. Yeah,
I think it could be his
I've
first
never
solo
seen that one.
album, actually.
first album. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's got a couple of absolute killer tunes on it. A really probably my favorite version of Blue Bossa, which has become such a hack jazz standard. Actually, almost you can't believe it can sound this good. But his solo on this is absolutely sensational, and Recording Me is another absolute killer kind of Latin infused track, and it's got a great rhythm section of Butch Warren on the bass, Pete LaRocca on the drums, and then
Oh, I love Pete Rock.
Coy Tyner on the piano, and Kenny Dorham on the trumpet. And this is one. This isn't a Tone Poet reissue, but it's one of the cheaper ones. And for me, it just sounds equally as good as the Tone Poet pressings. It just doesn't have such a thick cardboard sleeve. But in the UK,
What's the year of that reissue?
sorry, the the, the
What's the year of that reissue?
it's
You
this. I think it's either last year or this year.
know? Okay.
yeah.
But
It's the second time I got it the first time round on just on the general
yeah,
reissue. Sounds great.
it really sounds wonderful.
Mastered by Bernie Grundman, so it's going to be good.
Exactly.
Oh, good, good, fantastic,
And in the
awesome.
UK, these Tone Poets are really pricey. They're like £38, which is a lot of money.
Yeah, they're ridiculously priced. Period. No matter where you're at.
I mean, they're
Well,
all
I mean, I won't say. I won't say ridiculously priced, but they're not
They're
an
not cheap.
inexpensive buy.
Yeah.
No, they're not. No.
So some classic 1960s Blue Note jazz really from me to kick off.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Tone, what have you got?
Well, the first one I'm going to show is actually, I don't own the vinyl. I haven't been able to grab it yet, but it's such a fantastic record that I just wanted to share it. Um, there's a producer here in the US. His name is Violence. It's spelled like violent, but with an S on the end.
Mm.
Okay.
And he's not a well-known producer, but what he does is he writes and produces these entire albums. He writes the songs, the arrangements, produces the tracks, and then he selects a decently popular female vocalist to sing them. And I was unaware of him as an artist and a producer until this album. And this album is called Awake and Pretty Much Sober. And it's Violence with Monica Martin.
Mm.
Monica Martin, I don't know if you're familiar with the band Fox, P-H-O-X, Fox.
No.
Monica Martin is the lead singer of a band called Fox. They're a Midwestern sort of a rootsy, jazzy indie band that incorporates some non-conventional instruments within that genre, like they use a clarinet and a banjo, but not in a traditional banjo or a clarinet way. And their records have been great, and they haven't made a record in a while. And I was just searching Monica Martin because I wanted to know what she was doing, and I came across this record. This is probably one of the best albums that I have heard in the past decade. It's very I want to call it if you took some of the best Coldplay music, I mean some of the most well-produced and well-written Coldplay songs, mainly the earlier stuff, and you just kind of upped it, you know, you gave it a huge boost in terms of the quality of songwriting and the quality of arrangements. This is what you kind of get here. There's very little MIDI instrumentation. It's mostly live instrumentation, and her vocals, which are very soft. She's not a strong vocalist per se. She has a decent range, but it just fits this music well. I ran across the song that really touches me on this album and that I would recommend. In fact, I'm going to email both of you guys links to some of the songs I want you to hear. A song called Unraveling that is just, I mean, you better not be going through anything, a divorce or a breakup or anything. I mean, it'll just drive you to tears. It's just an absolutely brilliantly melodic, uses strings, cellos, violas, violins, and piano with her just beautiful, soft, ethereal vocals. And it's just one of the best records I've heard. And in fact, I think it's probably, I contacted him. I told him who I was. I contacted him. I told him that it was Unraveling is probably the best written song that I have heard in the past 10 years.
Wow.
It's just a great album. So I'm after the vinyl, but the CD sounds great. And so this has been on high rotation. Again, it's Violence featuring Monica Martin. And the album is called Awake and Pretty Much Sober.
Sounds great.
And it was released in 2017 on Partisan Records. It's an independent label out of New York.
Okay.
Great stuff.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going for a reissue here. This is Barry White, artist. Tom, going from the sublime to the ridiculous there, possibly in terms of lyrical. But this is Tom Brock, and this was released on 20th Century Records. So it's produced by Barry White, arranged by Gene Page, all the gang on it, and it's great. And it came out on from a UK label called Soul Brother a few years ago. Then it went out of print, and now oh God, who are they called? I completely forgot who they are. It's gone. Anyway.
Be with?
Oh, Mr. Bongo. Mr. Bongo. Brilliant.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
It's great. The only problem with the album is that there's some fantastic grooves on this album, but all the tracks are quite short, so you kind of almost want the full 10-minute Barry White kind of extended intro and outro. But it's a really
right.
good record, actually. He's got a great voice. He sounds something in between Donny Hathaway and Marvin Gaye. So a really serious
I'm
singer. So,
not familiar with him as an artist whatsoever.
very
That's
cheesy
great.
cover.
Nice.
Isn't it funny how a lot of cheesy covers end up shocking us when we actually drop the needle and you're like, wow, yeah.
So this next one, yeah, this is very different. This has just come out on vinyl. This woman here is called Liz Elensky, and this guy is known as Emanative, and he's a drummer. She's a singer, and they've made an album together with these guys. And it's again very, very hard to categorize, which, as any viewers will know, I'm always keen on the genre-defying music. There's something about the interplay between her voice and the drums. It's a really interesting mix of acoustic instrumentation and electronics. There's some really nice other bits of let me have a look. Sort of strings and horns, clarinets, bass clarinets, nice percussion, but very hard to categorize, and just a really refreshing, fresh listen. And again, with her vocal, a bit how you were describing the singer on the album you shared, not someone who needs to sort of bellow. It's kind of quite a soft voice, thoughtful lyrics, really nice harmonies, rhythmically really interesting, good songs, lots of texture, really properly diverse kind of album. I'm trying to remember what it's actually called.
I think some of my favorite records are ones that you have to stretch to kind of figure out how to categorize.
It's called The Volume of the Light. And I think it's been recorded during the lockdown period. Yeah, really, really nice. And very nicely presented as well. So, something brand new then.
All right. Let's see what I got. The next one, everything that I'm going to be showing, it's things that I've pulled out to listen to, or I've just recently gotten them and I put them on the turntable and have had a hard time putting them back. So even though I've been pulling other things, I'm keeping these out because they're just, they're keeping my attention. This next one is by jazz saxophonist John Clemmer. And the album's called Cry. It's 1978 on ABC Records. I've kind of grew up with John Clemmer. My dad had quite a few of his records. I think he's kind of an underrated, well, I don't think he is an underrated jazz horn player. He's really not mentioned a lot. He goes back to the 60s. I had picked up a MoFi pressing of one of his mid-70s recordings last year, and I showed it on a video, and I had mentioned one of his earlier records that I've been listening to called Blowing Gold. And that comes out of the end of the 60s, maybe 68 or 69. And it's definitely soul jazz. It's definitely straight ahead jazz, but he incorporates a lot of things that you would not incorporate with straight ahead jazz. Like that particular record, Blowing Gold, if you were to take The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, that debut record, and mix it with the best soul jazz album you've ever heard, that's John Clemmer.
Wow.
And so he just does really unique things. And when I picked this album up, I had never seen it, and I said, well, it maybe looks a little cheesy, maybe it looks a little 80s, and I wonder what it's going to sound like. But when I put it on, I realized that this is a straight ahead free jazz, avant-garde, improvisational saxophone jazz record with absolutely no accompaniment. The entire album, and in fact, he even states it here on the back, the entire album, it says these performances were completely and spontaneous improvisations.
Mm.
And what's really interested me and impressed me about that is the fact that even though they're improvisations, there's a structure to these songs. And it's just amazing how even in the midst of recording himself in an improvisational atmosphere, he has this knack of still giving structure to the song, just off the cuff. And it was very impressive. And the only thing that I can say that he uses accompaniment wise is he uses the reverberation of his horn. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this was done after the fact or it was done during recording, but somebody is tweaking that reverberation, maybe bending the pitch on it here and there. And what he's doing is he's playing up against that, mm-hmm. the old reverberation of his horn. So he's responding to that. And it's just fantastic. The entire album, I mean, it's one of those albums where, you know, it's not like it carries you and then one song comes and you're like, oh, you know, you just kind of drop the ball. The entire album is a roller coaster ride, and it's just a fantastic record.
Yeah, I played one of his a Song of Waterfalls, one of his earlier albums on the radio show a couple of weeks ago, actually.
Oh, and cool.
I think earlier on he used Echoplex quite a lot on his sax. So yeah,
I think that's what he's doing here. I think that's exactly what he's doing here. But there's no other accompaniment whatsoever. No percussion, no anything, no rhythm, no anything. It's just improvisational solo jazz saxophone played up against the reverberation of his horn.
That'd be great to hear him solo. Yeah, because he hardly needs. I mean, he makes so many layers of sound with a saxophone. You almost don't need a band actually half the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
He had an incredible reputation. He had amazing technique, evidently, John Clemmer. I mean, he's kind of really underrated as a player.
Totally underrated. Yeah, absolutely. So, how about you, John?
Great stuff. Well, okay. Well, this was a VCLT from Dave in North Carolina. This is a band called Ghost Trees, who are from North Carolina. And the album's called Universal Topics. They're a trio, tenor saxophone, bass and drums. And a duo. They're tenor saxophone and drums. And this was actually recorded at Rudy Van Gelder's, and which I didn't realize was still open and recording. Actually, there's a woman called Maureen Sickler, who's now the engineer at Rudy Van Gelder's. So these three guys from North Carolina went up to Van Gelder's and recorded this really nice record, actually. Really just, it sounds very, it's got a very European kind of sound to it. It almost sounds like a kind of French or German kind of free jazz kind of style. But really nice stuff. Pressed up on vinyl. You can sneeze, sorry, folks. Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Dave, and very nice.
Nice gift.
Yeah.
Nice.
And yeah, really recommended. I mean, kind of, you can really hear the room, which is the Van Gelder room, obviously on the record, and it sounds terrific.
There's a lot of great, and I'm hoping to do a video on this soon. There's a lot of great modern jazz artists. And when I say modern, I don't mean contemporary jazz. I mean straight ahead jazz artists in modern times that are just ignored. And there's a lot of great stuff out there.
Well, talking about hearing the room, that's definitely a feature of this album, which I don't think I've seen anyone share yet, which I'm kind of surprised about. This is a collaboration between a electronic musician / DJ / producer who goes under the name Floating Points. He's also his real name is Sam Shepard, and Pharoah Sanders, who's 80, I believe, the incredible sax legend, and the London Symphony Orchestra. And this album is called Promises, and it's essentially two sides made up of 5 movements on side 1 and a further 4 on side 2, and it's a beautiful listen. Actually, it's very sort of transcendent and absorbing, and centers around a very simple motif, which is played on a treated harpsichord and then sort of layered up with other kind of keyboard instruments. It might sound a little cliched. I think it's a bit like the 21st century version of Tubular Bells, actually. I think it could be a very big record for people. It's and then it's got Pharoah Sanders sort of coming in and out. You hear him singing at one point. You hear him just breathing, blowing the air in his horn. He's sounding great. It's very understated in terms of what you might have heard of Pharoah doing in the past. But it's
so that harpsichord, when you mentioned the harpsichord, is it being played in a jazz style format, or is it just being used ethereally, or how's
the electronics is a big feature. So a lot of sounds are being treated. You hear the creak of the harpsichord. You know, you can hear the creaking of the notes and the keys. There's this sort of sense of air that's very prevalent. Again, it's one of these records that feels kind of fairly unique and right for the time we've all been going through. Very kind of reflective, dynamic at times, because particularly on side 2, the strings really kind of come in and provide real kind of dynamic color. When I first listened to the first side, I wasn't overly impressed. It sounded, but it's the sort of thing you need to listen to. And the more you listen to it, the more you can hear subtlety and color and shade. It's ostensibly very simple, but there's actually a lot going on. So yeah, very.
And how did you come across? How did you come across that one again?
Because I'm a great fan of Floating Points. I sort of discovered him about 3 years ago. He had an album called Elenia, and he has a history going back probably nearly 10 years of putting out more kind of house orientated music. But he's a very interesting character. He's clearly, I think he's a classically trained pianist. He's also got, you know, he's a doctor in sort of physics or something. So he's a very bright bloke. He's quite a deep thinker, and just very interesting. He's got his own record label, and anything that's got an association with him is interesting. So definitely a distinctive voice. So yeah, I think many people in the VC might really like this record. So it's called Promises, Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders, London Symphony Orchestra.
Cool. Let's see. This next one is an older record and a newer record. I pulled out 2 versions of it. You're probably familiar with it. It's Abbey Lincoln.
Oh,
Abbey is Blue.
I love it.
And I'm a huge fan of jazz and pop vocals. I have a lot of it in my library. And I hadn't listened to this album. This is actually the I think it's 1958 original mono pressing on Riverside. And I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see that I follow Craft Recordings. You know, Craft does a lot of great remastered or reissued albums that have not been put on vinyl. And I see this ad from Craft, and they're re-releasing this album on 180 gram reissue. And I thought, well, I wonder, you know, what the difference that might, what type of difference that might be. And so I go on to Discogs and I'm looking and I see that Cornbread, which is I think it's a highly underrated reissue remastering label. I would call it an underrated audiophile label. And what they do is they put everything that Cornbread puts out is they try to focus on original master tapes that need restoration of some sort. And they spend the money to restore. And then they remaster everything and they throw it on 180 gram high quality virgin vinyl. Everything is coming on the virgin vinyl. And I thought, well, if I'm going to get another recording of it, I don't just want to reissue, I want to remaster because I want something different to hear. And so I picked this thing up. got it home, and it sounds unbelievable. You know, on earlier recordings like this, um, especially you know, pop vocals, jazz vocals, the accompaniment and the instrumentation was always kind of pushed back, and the vocals are always way up front, super up front, and which sounds good. It sounds archaic. It sounds of the time. But what they did on this was they brought the vocals back a bit, and you hear a lot more of the band. And it's got a fantastic lineup. I mean, you've got Kenny Dorham's on trumpet, Wynton Kelly's on piano, Phil Joe Jones on drums, Sam Jones is on bass. I mean, it's got a fantastic personnel. You could take her vocals off of this record, and it's just a fantastic jazz record. I mean, an amazing quartet record. But it's been one of my favorites. And so ever since I got this thing, I pulled them both out and was A-Bing them, and it's just, I can't put them back. I just keep listening to it and listening to it. It's just a fantastic record.
She was married to Matt Sloan.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know for how long, but yeah. But she's fantastic. I think she's just an underrated, at least in modern times when people look back at these artists, she's just an underrated vocalist of the time. I mean, you know, people are automatically jumping to Sarah Vaughan, or they're jumping to Billie Holiday, and things of that nature. But I think that she gets overlooked, and I think that she deserves a lot more credit and respect. She's a fantastic performer. Fantastic. So this is, I'm having a hard time putting these back, and so I've just been listening to them. So highly recommend it. Highly recommended.
Yeah, she made a very nice record in the 90s on Verve, which is, I think, only on CD, which is really, really nice, actually. Came on French Verve. She's still singing fantastically well.
Yeah, I haven't heard any of her modern stuff past the 70s, but I might have to check that out.
Actually. Okay, my one, I went to a record shop and bought this, actually, which was, I just had to have it. I've got it on CD, but...
Oh, yeah. Love that record. Fantastic.
I always thought Alex Coltrane kind of slightly kind of kind of described as being kind of very wispy and spiritual, when she's really badass, actually, on this record. I mean, she absolutely tears it up with Roy Haynes and Reggie Workman, and kind of, it's got almost like a gospel thing going on this record, actually. The way it suddenly dawned on me halfway through, she plays organ on most of the record, and it's like I occasionally watch videos of kind of gospel bands, and the organ, it's very similar kind of style. She's just really hammering the organ on it. Anyway, it's a really nice. So yeah, very pleased to have this on vinyl. Came out on Ash Records, and it's they've done a nice job on it. Big thick cover.
That's the original pressing. That's an original pressing.
Not actually. No, I did have the original pressing, but it was a really bad copy, actually, so I got rid of it. But
where did you go record shopping, John?
Honest John's.
Ah.
Which is just literally just down the road. So.
Yeah. Was it busy?
Yeah, it was actually. It just felt like a normal John. They couldn't quite get the social distancing sorted out in there. They were hugging each other.
Well, very sadly, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we heard of the passing of Malcolm Cecil, who was a producer, musician, real technical innovator, and was one half of Tonto's expanding headband, Tonto being the original New Timbral Orchestra. So Tonto was actually a set of 10 synthesizers that were all linked together, and they made the album Expanding Headband, I think in 1970, possibly 69, and then this was the follow-up. And famously, Stevie Wonder heard that first album and just, had to get them into the studio. And from that meeting came Talking Book, Fulfilling His First Finale, Inner Visions. And, they were real collaborators with Stevie. And you're hearing Stevie playing Tonto on all of those albums. This is pure Tonto, although on one track we do have... Steve Gadd on drums, actually, on the track.
Oh, wow. Really?
And doing a kind of really weird Latin shuffle. I mean, these guys were real innovators sonically. I mean, a lot of people sort of think of electronic music sort of you know, they think of Kraftwerk and some of the kind of German bands, but these guys were, I think, really some of the original innovators. And both of these guys, Malcolm Cecil in particular, went on to produce many other artists that I had no idea, you know, his name was on the album till I sort of did a little search on Discogs of all the records I have, and he did loads of work with Gil Scott-Heron, Pointer Sisters, Graham Nash, Steve Hillage, all kinds of people.
Massive. He's on the. Oh no, it's not him. It's actually he's not on Manassas. Somebody else. Sorry.
Oh. But he also, you know, Malcolm Cecil was a bass player, a double bass player, and is on sort of albums with Ronnie Scott, who's like a famous UK sax player, and obviously runs the Ronnie Scott's Club here in Soho in London. Anyway, this I'd not come across this album, and I picked it up actually on hearing of his passing, because I just did a bit of digging, and it's a lovely album. The second side is called the Pyramid Suite, and just is a whole sort of series of kind of interconnected, interesting electronic pieces, I guess. But yeah, a great innovator, and very sad to have lost him. But great.
I've known of Tonto's work, you know, through all of the classic period Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
But I've never seen that album. I've never heard it.
I've never seen the album. I've never seen it. I've got the first one, but I've never seen this one. I actually think this one's better than the first one. But
I used to have the first one. It kind of went with having a lava lamp, I think.
It went with having a lava lamp. Yeah.
Oh God, the lava lamp.
Yeah.
All right. So this one, I just picked up maybe 6 months ago. It's Willie Hutch.
Yeah, I've been listening to that one.
Fully Exposed. Have you? Isn't this fantastic?
Great album.
Fantastic. So I have a couple of his other albums. I actually, you know, my dad had his records, and the one I listen to most is, I think it's the Number of the Beast one, which with the 666 on the front and all that stuff. And it's a very you look at the album and you're like, what is this guy talking about? But it's a gospel album in a sense. He's, you know, it's a religious record. It's a Christian record. Almost in the same vein as what were those two Caucasian guys here from the United States that did something in the early 60s? There were two brothers. They just made a movie on it. It was called You Must Believe in the Devil or something like that. I forget the duo's name. Anyway, they were kind of a country duo, and they did this album with the devil on the cover, and everybody thinks, you know, everybody thinks, you know, what are you guys talking about? But it's a gospel album, and so that's the one I've been listening to normally, and then I finally picked this up, and this thing instantly became my favorite Willie Hutch record. I mean, this thing is just, it's nonstop. I mean, there's no slow spots on this for me. It just keeps playing and playing. And I mean, I can listen to this thing, you know, back to back and not get tired of it. And that's why I've also had trouble putting this thing away. But it's a great sounding record. You know, some of his later stuff after this sounds, I was trying to think about how I would describe this record. And in most of my videos, I kind of like to give comparisons for people, you know, if they're not familiar with the record. I'm thinking, well, how does this record sound? And it sounds different in a way, like records after this sound more like if you were listening to Keeper of the Castle, Four Tops. But I'm listening to this record, and I'm hearing oh gosh, I'm hearing Curtis Mayfield. I'm hearing I mean, it's just a deeper soul sound, and this thing is just fantastic. And I haven't been able to stop listening to it either. And I thought I know you guys know this record.
Yeah,
I know you guys know this record.
I love the track. It's California something on the last track on side one.
California My Way. Yeah,
that's kind of epic, as well, isn't it?
And it absolutely is. It's fantastic. Um, my
And
favorite track on. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say the country band you're thinking of was the Louvin Brothers.
Yes, that's them.
The album's
Yeah,
called Satan is Real, and it's got a picture of Satan and coming. They call it.
coming
I've
to
got
get you. Yeah,
the
yeah.
album.
So the record after this one, I think it's the one. I think it's right after this, or maybe two after this. Because this is 72 or 73. This is 73, and the other one I'm talking about is I think 75 or 76. Um, and it's a great sounding record, but the difference between this and that, this is just more of a gritty sounding soul record, where his later stuff after this gets a little more polished.
Yes, yeah.
And this is just absolutely is my favorite Willie Hutch record. And I would tell anybody out there, if you don't have any Willie Hutch, he's very underrated.
Yeah.
Soul singer, and I just love him. I love him. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go for Jill Jones.
Oh yeah.
I'm doing a Prince special tomorrow on my radio show. So I've been listening to Prince nearly all week. And I managed to get down to a short list of 6 hours of Prince music. And I've only got a 2-hour show. So but this is a great album. You know this Jill Jones album? This was produced by Prince at Paisley Park.
Yeah, I've seen the album. I've never heard it ever.
Really good album, actually. I mean, I think a lot of people assumed she was going to be like almost like a cipher, a bit like Apollonia and Vanity and all those other artists, but she's a great singer, really good material. Prince doesn't credit himself on the cover at all, but he actually wrote all the songs and plays on everything on it as well. It's a really, really good kind of just kind of post-revolution time with Prince, and it's really good stuff. She was a kind of quite an established singer before she joined up with Prince, and it's highly recommended record, actually, well overdue to be reissued, actually.
That was the only one that she did, right?
No, she did a few after actually as well.
No, but with Prince.
Yeah, kind of classic, almost classic kind of classic 80s graphics on the front as well.
Absolutely.
Really good stuff, and there's a wonderful track on it called "Baby You're a Trip," which is a really, really good. And all the arrangements are by Claire Fisher as well on it, so it's kind of real stuff in terms of arranging. So tonight I've got to get it down from 3 hours to 2 hours before I can record it.
Why don't you just do 2 shows, John?
Yeah, there you go.
I can't do 2 shows. I need to go back to doing a normal show.
Part 1 and part 2.
Could do.
That's what I did on Stevie. I couldn't do it in 2 hours. Anyway,
speaking of Stevie, what do you think about this? See that?
Oh,
very nice, beautiful.
That's gorgeous.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
We're finishing up the bottom of my arm, but he just really killed that. He just knocked that out of the park.
Yeah,
that's very good.
Very
nice. Very nice.
Richard.
Yeah, so in the market town where I live, we have a market 3 times a week, and a couple of different record stalls pop up, and again, just so nice to be digging through crates. It's very therapeutic. And I picked up this record, which I'd never seen. This is the 12-inch single version of FM, which was the Steely Dan track that was on the compilation album called Gold. And it's just a beautiful tune. And
is that the one with the guitar solo rather than the sax solo on it?
It's got a guitar solo and a sax solo.
That's what I need to find.
I've never seen that at all. I have that.
There was one. I think it may only have been pressed in the UK. This is definitely a UK pressing. Anyway, it's just great to have it. And there's an FM reprise on the B side, which is it Pete Chistleib, or I don't know what is the sax player.
Yeah.
And a wonderful Walter Becker guitar solo as well on the main track. And it just sounded just a great tune. I mean, I do love Steely Dan. They don't sound like anybody else. They just so created their own sound, and were just so tuned in to the best players at whatever time, including the Donald
even early
solo albums and the latest Steely Dan. They just knew who the great players were, and they brought them in.
Right. You know, the thing with Steely Dan is they're and the older I've gotten and the deeper I've gotten into collecting and to interacting with other collectors, it amazes me how Steely Dan is, they're either hated with a vengeance or they're just absolutely adored. There's no in between with those guys, and I could never comprehend whatsoever how you can listen to any of their records and not think these guys were just brilliant. And then I think, well, maybe there's people understand music differently, and people who have an understanding of music as in technicality, and then people who have an understanding of what they like audibly and maybe have a knowledge of the history, are two different types of listeners. When I listen to Steely Dan, I'm listening as a musician or somebody who understands the complications of music, and I'm just blown away. So when I get people I hear say, "Oh, I hate that band, they're horrible," I cannot wrap my mind around that. You know?
No.
They're just fantastic.
And they love music. I mean, they care deeply, very deeply about music, I think.
I never got to see them live.
No.
Up until 6 months before Walter Becker passed. I saw them in Santa Barbara, California. I was so excited. I'd never seen them, and it was just, I was like a kid in a candy store. And then 6 months later, Walter Becker passes away, and I was just so thankful that I was able to see them.
Yeah, I saw them at the Rainbow in London when they had two drummers. They had Jeff Porcaro just joined them with so they had two drummers. It was kind of, the sound was terrible, absolutely terrible. There's actually a bootleg of it, which sounds better than it sounded on the night, actually. It was really, I think it was like a few weeks either before or after Little Feat played at the Rainbow. So it was like it was all these American bands suddenly turning up in the UK that you just hadn't heard about. But I can't even imagine. Wow. The bootleg was great, but live it sounded just like you couldn't actually hear what was going on at all, actually.
Wow.
You're on time.
Is it? Oh, that's right. It's me. That's me. This next artist, I actually pulled a compact disc as well because I just wanted to show where it came from. This next artist is Amber Mark. And Amber Mark is a newer R&B, a contemporary R&B artist who is a kind of a reflection back to a time where modern or contemporary R&B was so respected, and that was the 90s. The 90s was an amazing decade for contemporary R&B records. I mean, Faith Evans and artists like that who just made records that made you that never made you think, oh, this is junk. It was just done so well. And songs were written so well, and artists were artists. And when I first stumbled across Amber Mark, I stumbled across her, I want to say, on NPR's Tiny Desk. And I was just blown away. And then I started to research her music and where she came from. And she is such an underrated vocalist, performer, and songwriter. She writes, I believe she writes everything. And everything is based off of her experience. I think she was born in Germany, grew up, either she was born in Germany or she was born in the United States and then moved to Germany. Her mother was a German national and her father was never around. And when they came back to the United States, they lived in New York, and she kind of grew up in New York. And her mother ended up dying of cancer at a very early age. And a lot of her music is written about, her experiencing and coming to understand what relationships are between a man and a woman, but also about her experience in living these last years with her mom. And her records are really hard to find. This one was her first one that was a full length, and I can't find the vinyl. And even if you could, it's absolutely ridiculously priced. I mean, it's just absurdly priced. But I was able to get a copy of the compact disc and it's fantastic. But I've been listening to her second one, which is an EP called Conexiao. And I want to send you guys some links on her too when we're done, because I really want you guys to hear her. I just know that this is an artist that both of you will absolutely gravitate to. It's just right up both of your alley. And her production is it's minimalistic but full. Songwriting is absolutely great. Her vocal, she's got this beautiful raspy alto voice. It's just absolutely gorgeous. She's also something to look at, and she's a great performer. She's a very, I would call her a serious musician. You know, she's not, you know, oh, I want to be a singer to be a star. She's really in love with music and in love with being a performer. Mm-hmm. And you can tell on her performances. And I just kind of grabbed this in the past week, and again, it's been on constant rotation. Again, I kind of put it away after a while. You know, you play stuff enough, you get sick of it, you put it away, and then I may have seen something online that sparked, oh, let me pull the Amber Mark stuff back out, and it's just been, I've been just playing this thing back to back. It's a fantastic record, fantastic record. This is she was on Virgin. This is this particular one is 2018 on Virgin.
Wow.
Records. This one was the year before, 2017, and this is an EP. This is a full length. And coincidentally, the easiest place to, even though she's a US artist, the easiest place to get these pressings are in the UK.
Okay.
Which I was hoping that maybe because of that you guys have heard of her, but
no.
But irregardless, she's just a fantastic artist, and I mean, I push her on to people. You got to check her out. You got to check her out.
Okay.
Amber Mark, fantastic.
You're right though, about there being so many, especially that in the 80s, there were so many amazing singers around. I mean, yes. I mean, almost like too many. You couldn't. I remember seeing the first time I ever went to the States, I saw Phyllis Hyman do it, and she was just incredible,
unbelievable.
I mean, I've got her records, and they're good, but live, she was just unbelievable. And also, as you say, someone to look at. She was absolutely stunning, incredibly tall, really, really amazing looking woman, actually. Yeah. And believe it or not, I've only fairly recently discovered the Tedeschi Trucks Band, who are probably one of the biggest bands in the States. And it's really about 2 years ago. I kind of assumed they were kind of a bit like a kind of jam band, and I was never very interested in jam bands really. And then I actually started listening to their music, and they're really not a jam band at all. They're really good. And yes, this is the most recent one they did. The last one with this is the kind of extra single that came with it as well. And they're just kind of great songwriters, great musicians, and kind of this was the last album they made with Kofi Burbridge, who sadly died. In fact, died the day the album was released, which is awful kind of coincidence.
Wow. So what would you categorize that album in terms of like genre?
I mean, it's very soulful actually. I mean, it's obviously got a strong blues kind of bass to it, but they're much more than that actually. She's got a great voice, and he's obviously an amazing guitar player. But also there's a real funk thing going on, because they had the guys playing bass was a guy called Tim LaFave, who's actually now living in LA. In fact, he's down your way. And who's played with a lot of the kind of more the kind of funk end of the kind of jazz scene. He played on he also famously played on David Bowie's Black Star album as well.
Oh, okay.
He's a great bass player. So yeah, I mean, I've now picked up all their albums. So it's like discovering the Beatles in 1980 or something. I've got there in the end, and I just love them. I think they. I mean. They must be really suffering as well, you know, because they are a big band and they play 200 gigs a year, you know, so they must be really suffering from.
I bet. Yeah.
They kept the whole band on salary through lockdown, which is pretty.
Really?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, they lucked out, because this industry has just been a mess. Up until now, it's getting better. It's getting better. But last year was just, people were going, what am I going to do? So
Well, this next album, I discovered this artist because of a collaboration album that is out, but you can only get it streamed or on CD, and that's a collaboration between Pino Palladino and Blake Mills, who's a guitarist and singer. And yeah, I haven't got the vinyl yet, and we can't get it until June. So it got me digging into Blake Mills because I thought, who is this guy? It just sounds really interesting. And this is his album from 2020 called Mutable Set. It's a double vinyl, really nice pressing. And again, very hard to describe what his sound is. He's well, John and I, there's a lot of interviews with him, and the more we sort of find out about him, the more interesting he becomes. His three big influences are Mark Hollis from Talk Talk, Terry Reid, who was this incredible guy called Superlungs, who came around the late 60s in the UK and nearly joined Led Zeppelin. Who's the third person, John?
Todd Rundgren.
Todd Rundgren. There you go.
Oh wow!
And
Wow.
yeah, so what an interesting mixture, and he's just got a very distinctive, original take. He's kind of, again, sonically is really fascinating to listen to. It's very subtle, some really beautiful songwriting. You just really, yeah, it just takes you into another world. It's very kind of intimate, this album.
You get a good pressings. I gave up on mine. I had 3 pressings of it, and
Really, no, this is great. This is lovely.
So
Music.
I got,
You know what?
I got the high.
I think I'm sorry. I think you mentioned. I think I just saw him with Palladino performances on YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're. I don't know where they're, but they're kind of in a dimmed, intimate setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I looked for the record and I couldn't find it. Was this on a record? I couldn't find it.
It is coming out.
Okay, good.
It's a beauty. That's going to be one of the records of this year for sure.
Oh, it's got to be, because I was glued for days.
Yeah.
I saved all the videos and I would
Yeah.
just watch them over. It was amazing.
So interesting. So interesting.
Yeah.
He also produced Phoebe Bridges, who's obviously a big star, and he's all over the last Bob Dylan album. He plays on virtually every track on the last Bob Dylan album,
Oh, wow.
and was going to be in Bob Dylan's band, touring band, actually, before lockdown. And he actually played a couple of live gigs with him. So he's got this amazing kind of breadth of field, really. And it's kind of very interesting. I mean, one thing in the States is you do get musicians who have this incredible wide vision, actually, will cross over everything. And we don't really have that so much in the UK anymore. We used to have it, but people are very boxed in, I think, in the UK. And we could kind of learn, I think, from people like him.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I'm glad. I must get the vinyl then, because I gave up. I got 3 copies and ended up buying the high-res files in the end. So.
Are you guys familiar with Nick Hakim?
No.
No. So I got turned on to Nick Hakim. Here in Los Angeles, there's an independent station called K Crew, KCRW, and they're an official. Yeah, and so they're an official NPR station.
I've been on the show, Tom.
Have you really?
I was on Morning Becomes Eclectic twice.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So
long time
when
ago.
people ask me, how do you find new music? I always say, man, and I have a hard time. So at nighttime, sometimes I'll put on the radio station, and I've stopped doing it lately because instead of going to sleep, I find myself grabbing the damn phone to Shazam everything I'm hearing. Like, who the hell is that? And I'll think, oh, I'm just gonna put on K Crew and go to sleep. And I stay up for 3 hours Googling shit because everything that's coming out, I'm like going, oh my God. And so I learn of a lot of new bands. And so maybe about 4 years ago, they played Nick Hakim. And I was just fascinated with Nick Hakim. And he's kind of like a really very eclectic, avant-garde, classic soul artist. but he records everything very lo-fi. I mean, everything sounds super lo-fi. But you can hear the brilliance in his music, in his writing, in his thought process, and even though the instrumentation is pretty minimalistic, it's just so well done. But lo-fi, and it's kind of like his trademark. And I think I showed one time he had 2 EPs. They combined the EP into one to make a full length. I bought that. Then his actual first studio LP was called The Green Twins. Fell in love with that record. And I think I like that record better than this one. But this is his newest one, and it's called Will This Make Me Good? 2020 on ATO Records. ATO's just been putting, I mean, they always have, but they've just been putting out such great stuff in the past decade. Just fantastic. And I like his previous album better than this, but I've been spinning this a lot lately just to try to get used to it. It's not something that's going to resonate with, I don't think, anyone right away, but if you sit with it a while, you'll attach to it. And again, it's some of it gets really eclectic, like maybe too much for most people's taste. And so if anyone were to start with Nick Hakim, I would say probably do the album before this, which is called Green Twins. It's like a big eyeball on the cover. Green Album. Fantastic, unbelievable record. And then graduate into this. But I've been listening to this a lot lately. It's double LP, heavyweight vinyl. Fantastic cardstock on the album. I mean, his albums are done really well. And it's great. It's one of those things, you know, John, you're drinking wine, you just hang out on a relaxing evening and have a glass of wine or some coffee and just put this on and you'll ride through it. But it's a fantastic record. And a lot of the performances I've seen online with him have been in the UK. And so I thought, well, maybe they've heard of him before too. So,
yeah, very nice.
But yeah, he's great. Independent artist. You know, he has his following. He's not huge. He's got his following, but he's got a dedicated following. And so I wanted to show him.
Nice.
And introduce him to you guys and to anybody else. But I would recommend, if you haven't heard of him and you want to, you know, try him out, listen to his Green Twins LP that came before this one. I think 2017.
Did you do a session on KCW, or was it just played on? Are they still doing sessions?
I think. Oh yeah, I think they're still doing sessions.
Yeah.
I see more sessions being done on KEXP, which is in Seattle.
Mm.
And to me, they have the best, you know, radio station sessions. They're just fantastic. But I believe that K Crew is still doing them. I haven't checked lately, but
I knew the guy,
so.
the music director. He was there was for quite a long time a guy called Nick Harcourt was the music director and presented that show. Came from Birmingham. I met him in Birmingham, and when I went over to LA, I had this job which I was the head of music for the British Council, and he said come on the show. So I did 2 mornings on KCRW, which was like,
that's crazy. Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's good. I would love to do a show on that station. I mean, that station's just fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic station.
That and also, I mean, like WFMU in New York is pretty good as well. That's about as fantastic as anything, I think. Okay, pull this out. This kind of this
love that record
on my head this week. Actually, I was kind of looking for something else, and I pulled this out. And I hadn't listened to this for a long time. Actually, it's a great album. And also, I noticed it's been reissued a couple of years ago as a double 45 RPM pressing. But
that's really the one I have. That's the one I have on 45 RPM double LP. Yeah, that's a fantastic record. Unbelievable.
Just a great record. I mean, it's a trio with Blood Ulmer and Charles Burnham on violin and drums. That's it. That's the lineup on this record. And I think it's his best record.
And that's the original pressing that you have, correct? Yeah. That's like what, 1980, 1981?
1983, yeah.
83, yeah, 83.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, it's just weird that, I mean, he made 5 records for CBS, you know, the Columbia. The idea that would happen now, almost unimaginable. Yeah. This is really, I think this is, the other ones they kind of work. They've got some good tracks, but this is the one, actually. Best setting for him, definitely. Really highly recommended. Actually, you can get the original pretty cheaply, actually. You don't have to pay a lot of money for it. But there is also, as you say, a very nice double 45 RPM presses.
Yeah, and they did a good job with that. But I'm still after an original copy. I'm not sure if the 45 had to have been remastered. And I have looked at originals, and they're not, you're right, they're not that pricey.
But Mark and I, we saw him, Mark, didn't we? He wasn't very good when we saw him.
No,
it was weird.
Yeah, it was as you. I think we recognised that no one had seemed very rehearsed. It was with Shannon Jackson. Who else was
Should
there?
have been.
Was it Melvin?
Joseph.
Okay.
Trombonist.
Yeah. We've got to keep moving, guys. I'm feeling like we're we could be having our record finale Zoom VC video, so we're going out in style. Very sadly, also since our last video, the bass player Paul Jackson passed away, and probably for me as a bass player, the bassist that I most admire and most kind of feel his feel. I love his feel. I just love the way he plays. And sort of listening to lots of Herbie stuff and Headhunters and Azteca. And then I came across a track that I'd never heard before, or I just didn't know about, which is a track called Cheney Do with the Pointer Sisters. And I'm sure this is an album you can pick up very cheaply in the US. You can pick it up pretty cheaply here. And there's one, I mean, it's all great, but there's the track Cheney Do basically has the Headhunters as the backing band. And it's produced by David Rubinson, who did so much work with Herbie in the 70s and the 80s. But it's a really funky, psychedelic New Orleans gumbo stew. It's absolutely sensational track. With Paul Jackson just absolutely on fire. And also a brilliant tune called How Long Bet You Got a Chick on the Side, which is the first track on side one, which is also sensational. And it's weird. I've actually got a Best of Pointer Sisters album, which I've only ever really listened to Yes We Can because that was the tune. And I discovered both these tracks are on that album. But it's just got such a bad cover. You know, I think
for now it has a bad cover.
Yeah. Anyway,
back then it was great.
Album. And they're just amazing. Pointer Sisters are amazing, actually.
They are amazing.
Those early albums, the harmonies, the vibe, really smoking stuff. So yeah, and so sad about Paul Jackson.
You know, there's a Bobby Womack track with Headhunters on as well.
Is there?
Yeah. I'll dig it out when we finish, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll put it out when we finish the video. Otherwise, we're going to be going all night.
Okay, so this next one I'm going to show, it was just released last month. I'm a huge, you guys know me. I think everybody knows that I have an extremely eclectic taste, and my taste is spreads over multiple genres, and I just love music, and I find a way to like almost anything and find things in that I want to explore. So, I mean, as a kid, I grew up as a Kiss fan. I was a huge fan of Kiss, massive fan of Kiss, and I wouldn't say I'm a fanatic, but I do own a lot of their stuff. And when I knew this album was coming out, I knew about the band, but when this album was coming out, I thought, you know what, I gotta grab it. It looks like it may be cheesy. So I started looking at some of the footage of the making, and I said, maybe this is going to be a great record. And that is Paul Stanley's Soul Station, his soul band.
Wow.
And the band has been around for about 4 years or so. Growing up, I always thought to myself, Paul Stanley could be a great soul vocalist. I bet you he would sound great as a soul vocalist. I always had that thought. And when I first heard about him putting together this band, I thought, yeah, I always thought about that my whole life, but maybe it's not going to be such a good idea. He's getting older, and his voice, he's always had a fantastic rock voice. He's just had an amazing vocal, but maybe these songs are too much for him now. Boy, I cannot put this album down.
Right.
It's a fantastic record. The entire album. I mean, he's picked a lineup of amazing backup singers and fantastic musicians. Nobody who's really famous. He just handpicked some up and comers who were session musicians and things, touring musicians, touring vocalists, and he put together, auditioned a great band, and put together a great band, and this entire thing is remakes of Motown classics. I mean, we got Could It Be I'm Falling in Love. Well, that's not a Motown classic, but you know what I mean. That era of soul music, late 60s, early 70s. Could It Be I'm Falling in Love? Ooh Baby, Ooh Child, Just My Imagination, Whenever You're Ready, I'm Ready, Tracks of My Tears, Let's Stay Together, La 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 Means I Love You, You Are Everything, Baby I Need Your Lovin'. I mean, and he murders these things. He does a fantastic job. I mean, you can tell that okay, I know the difference between performance and studio, and you can tell that, oh, okay, I mean, he stretched on this one, but he pulled it off. How many takes he had to do, how many overdubs he had to do, who knows? But the point is the final recording is just fantastic. And I thought, okay, this is just going to be cheesy, but it's not. The reproduction of the music and his performance is just, it's amazing. This was released last year on it's on Universal, on UME. The packaging's great, the recording's great. It's a double LP, and I'm seeing a lot of Kiss fans where I thought was going to be the absolute most pushback. Just received this record. Just fantastic. They're just, I'm going to say in the 80th percentile of Kiss fans are just going, yeah, it's just a great record. And I highly recommend it. Anybody who, whether you're a Kiss fan, a rock fan from the 70s, classic rock fan, or if you're a fan of that era of soul music, he does a really great job, in my opinion.
Okay.
And yeah, I just had to show it. I had to freak you guys out.
I always remember when because Kiss were on the same label as Funkadelic, so I always remember these joint ads that used to appear in the music press back in the early 70s of Kiss and Funkadelic together.
And
just think, who are these people? They both look completely insane. These two bands.
Right. Well, yeah, highly recommended record. He did a fantastic job. Absolutely.
Okay, I got one more record, haven't I? This is it. Okay, I'm going to show this actually. There's Jack Sunday on Instagram showed this today, and I played it a few days ago actually, so I thought I should show it. It's Japanese, obviously. Masahiko Togashi, who's a percussionist, and this is a very, very kind of laid back, very big ensemble. He's a kind of drummer who had an accident, and you can't really see on the cover actually, but he's been playing in a wheelchair for most of his career. And he's great player. Very, very, almost kind of sounds like a bit like the kind of art ensemble Chicago from their very early days, like People in Sorrow kind of time. Very beautiful record, very, very kind of almost minimal in its kind of sound and approach. But yeah, so that cover's not faded, it actually is that color. Which kind of goes with the music somehow. Yeah, and it's just a very nice, came out in East West, which is a Japanese label which put a lot of jazz and improvised music out in the 70s and 80s. So yeah.
I wonder if I saw Fred. I think I've seen the record. I've never heard the record. I know who he is. I don't know maybe I saw somebody show that one time only before in the VC, and I think it may have been Fred.
Really? Yeah, I just noticed it today. It just reminded me on Instagram, actually, for somebody had it up on Instagram. So it was Jack Sunday. You know Jack Sunday? Does the Instagram things? Does really interesting, kind of long reviews. He put it up today, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
So we on to.
Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you guys really quickly. I've been watching you guys for years and interacting, and my most favorite thing about your videos, aside from the massive knowledge that both of you have together, it's incredible. My favorite thing about your videos is that no matter when John would say anything of any interest or anything that was interesting to Mark. Mark's response is always, mmm. Man, I love that. Please never stop doing that, because every time I watch your videos, I look for the mmm. I love it. Yeah. I was afraid to say that because now I'm afraid you're going to stop doing it.
It'll keep coming.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. So we're on to books, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Books and films. So actually, I've been showing a lot of sort of philosophical, big thinking books recently, but actually, I've been back on the music side.
What might come up now?
This is 1971, Never a Dull Moment by David Hepworth, and it's just a book about all the music that came out in that year, and my goodness, what a year it was. It actually, just reading it, that felt like a massive turning point. You know, the 60s had passed, the Beatles had split up, and suddenly, you know, there was a lot more space for other artists to step forward. And it was also a moment where, I mean, you just look at the list of albums that came out in that year, and it's just like, blimey, unbelievable, you know, unbelievable kind of set of classics. Let's see if I can find. Yeah, so you've got you know, Bill Withers, Just As I Am, The Who, Who's Next, Joni Mitchell, Blue, Funkadelic, Maggot Brain, Gene Clark, White Light, T-Rex, Electric Warrior, The Carpenters, Isaac Hayes, Shaft, Black Sabbath, Master of Reality, on and on. Just, you know, just so many incredible albums, and a moment where the album became the thing. You know, the sort of, obviously singles were still important, but I think in a sense what the Beatles had done is they'd kind of really developed the art form of the album as a thing that you can listen to. And also, just, you know, it was before touring became the really big business thing, so there was still that thing about musicians just doing it because they wanted to connect with their audience, and it less about it all being about money, and about selling product. And yeah, just a great read, actually, very well written, and covers a lot of different artists and albums. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. As a, you know, it's not a heavy read, but it was it's got me really wanting to get a copy of Who's Next, actually, which I realise I don't have.
That sounds great.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely would like a copy of that.
Yeah, a great book, David Hepworth. And in terms of what I've been watching, there's a series which I'm not sure if you're getting in the States yet, Tone, which is called The Unforgotten, and it's a kind of crime drama. And we've just had the well, not the final series, but the latest series, which had been you know, was supposed to have come out kind of earlier last year, and because of lockdown they had to stop filming, and then they managed to kind of complete it. But it's been one of those series where the ending is so dramatic, like everyone's been talking about it, and it's one of those moments where, you know, people aren't going out, so they're watching the telly, and it was one of those things where you couldn't watch all the episodes in one go. They were coming out each week, and when that final episode came out, it was like, blimey, it was powerful.
Is this on network television, or is it on streaming?
It was on network ITV. It's probably on BritBox. I would be surprised. Or
the first series on Netflix, actually, but I don't think the new one is, but some of the old ones.
Yeah. The other series are great. They're all on Netflix, so you can stream them. It's very good. It's very subtle. Very British, very subtle, very good, brilliant, actually. So over to you, Tom.
Okay. Well, I was going to show a book, different book than what I was going to show, that I'm going to show now. But I ended up, I kept promising my tattoo artist, so I'll lend you the book. And so I left it with him, but it was a book with Shirley Jackson's. I don't know if you're familiar with Shirley Jackson, with all of her most popular writings. Of course, she was most famous. She was a shock writer in the 30s and the 40s. And she wrote a really famous short story called the oh gosh, I'm at a loss for word. The Lottery, which is just a mind-blowing story. I mean, it just makes you go, wow. But anyway, so I'm like, okay, well, what book have I been looking at other than that? So I had just recently got this particular book. It's called Record Stores by Bernd Jonkmans. And I'm a huge fan of coffee table books. I just got this as BCLT from Andre over at Linda Legg. And I showed this a couple videos back. But I've been looking at this a lot lately, and it's not a heavy read whatsoever, not at all. It's mostly photographs, but it's this guy who's traveled all over the world and photographed, record stores. He asks, simple things. What is your favorite record? What's the most expensive record you've ever sold? But I've been looking at it a lot lately because I've been in the past few years. I won't get too into it, but I've been in the past a couple years doing work on my own version of something like this, that's a little more, well, a lot more literarily in depth than just photographs. Because I'm a huge proponent for the independent record store. I mean, I'm just a huge fighter for the independent record. So I've been really focusing on looking and just inspecting the way that this book was done, because I want to do something even better than this. But this is a great book. I just wanted, this is what my face has been buried in the past few weeks. And so, it's a great coffee table book. Shows some great record stores, got some great record stores from the UK and all over the world, Tasmania, Germany, a lot of places. So this is a great book. If you like coffee table books that aren't too involving, and don't twist your mind, and you just want something to enjoy, it's a good one. So
looks good to me.
Are we doing TV shows or movies now, or are we waiting?
Yeah. Go turn. Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't watch a lot of TV whatsoever. I mean, I'm so immersed in music. I do watch motion pictures. And I think the last movie I saw was just a brand new Godzilla versus Kong, which was actually a good movie. But what I have been watching lately was the past 2 months, I've been just immersed in watching all 9 seasons of Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I could imagine.
And I mean, I was born when it just was ending the run of the seasons. But, growing up, you see the reruns and you watch and you watch and you watch, and you grow up with those shows, and I hadn't seen them in a long time. And I watched the first few episodes and I just got sucked in. And and I think the reason why I got sucked in was because it just reminds you, and irregardless of the show being set, in the mid to late 1800s, it reminds you of a time, even in our existence, where things were easier, people were nicer, politics weren't so ingrained in the everyday citizen. You just lived your life. You could walk home from school. Your parents gave you a key to the house when they, and they weren't coming home for 2 or 3 hours. And it just with what we're going through now and how the world is now, it just kind of brought me back to a time as a kid when I remember watching these shows where I could do that, where I was out until, past dark, and we were running around in the streets and playing hide and go seek and just doing all of these things that my kids don't do anymore. They just don't do. And so I just got sucked into the show, probably for nostalgic reasons, and for reasons being that I wish I could interact with people the way that these guys are interacting with each other. And I just, all 9 seasons over a 2-month period, and just man, just a great television show.
I almost be locked down for another year so I can watch them. That's such a great. I think I love that show as well. I mean, we did. Yeah. It got very weird broadcast in the UK. You got bits of series and all out of order, and it was all over the place. Actually,
Oh yeah,
I loved it. Yeah, God, yeah, what a great thing to watch. Actually,
fantastic.
yeah. So my book, I've just reread this, and even if you don't like Bob Dylan's music, this is such a well-written book. It's absolutely brilliant. You can read it in a day, actually, and it's just he just writes so well. I guess he would do, really. It's not a surprise, really. And I don't think we're ever going to get Chronicles Volume 2 and 3, but this is just, and it's not chronological, it kind of jumps around. And the stuff in here about jazz and the stuff in here about how he records his music is just brilliant, actually. I mean, yeah, so I really enjoyed that. And I literally devoured it. I had a last couple of weeks off, so I devoured the whole thing in a day, actually.
Wow.
TV programs, really easy, actually. I kind of, after well over 10 years, I just started watching The Wire again, which is probably the opposite of Little House on the Prairie, actually.
Right.
But I mean, it's just so good. I mean, I forgot how good it was, actually. It is so good. I mean, there's been a lot of kind of okay kind of TV series in the UK, but they tend to be very overwrought and kind of almost kind of hysterical. And I just, going into the second episode of The Wire, and the first 10 minutes are taken up with somebody trying to get a photocopier to work. I thought, this is great. I love this, actually. And the character development's brilliant. It's all just, you can feel the layers coming into place. It's just like Shakespeare or something like that. Really is the best thing that's ever been on television, I think. So I'm just nearly the end of the first season. It's just, you know, it's old now, but, and of course the music's amazing in it as well. I mean, the fantastic music.
What do you mean you're not watching the young ones, right? You're not watching the young ones anymore.
I think I lived in the young ones. we were actually, it was based on us, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually, I was a student when the Young Ones was being broadcast, so it was like just, you know, it was just life.
I worked with the woman who wrote it with Rick Mail as well, so.
I think we should say goodbye to our viewers, if there's any still who've stuck through this epic finale of the BC Meetup Sessions series, and a big thank you to Tone. Very entertaining and brilliant to have you on the show, Tone, and to share your amazing eclectic music. And great hearing you talk about the music and why it moves you. It's fantastic. And so
likewise.
So listen, we'll see people soon, and continue to stay well, and
you too, both of you.
Stay connected. We'll be back with you, Tone. We're just going to end the recording. See you, folks.
Thank you.
See you later.